Hello everyone, and today we are going to discuss a very interesting game. And the basic idea of discussing this game is that we are going to check out how to crush the King's Indian defense with the white pieces. King's Indian defense is a very aggressive opening. Even there are so many complications. Even you see matches between top engines, they actually go for playing the King's Indian defense. So definitely there is something special. And for example, and in the King's Indian defense, black is the only player who actually attacks. So there are many players playing with the white pieces who feel very uncomfortable, and they are always confused what to play against King's Indian defense. So finally, not to worry, I'm going to discuss a very interesting game in which we are going to check out how white simply crushed black pieces. So let's check it out. So, playing with the white pieces, if you know these guys, then great. If you do not know these guys, then I'm going to explain. So, with the white pieces, we have Pavel Ponkratov, and playing with black pieces, we have Yunguo, and both the players are grandmasters, are very high rated, very strong players. Black is having a rating of 25-21. White is having the rating of 26-51. So definitely the game is going to be very interesting. So without any further ado, let's dive into the game. So first of all, the King's Indian defense position is white starts out with 1d4 and black responds with knight to f6, c4 g6, and we have knight to c3, bishop g7 e4, and we have d6. So this is the standard position of the King's Indian defense. From here the King's Indian defense begins, and from here white is already having many options to continue the game. White can go for playing bishop e3, bishop e2, f3, f4, even h3, knight f3. There are so many options you can see already in this position. But after g6, here white went for the move f3. This variation is already going to be transposed into some another variation I'm going to show you. After f3, black replied with bishop to g7, e4, d6, and we have knight to c3. So you see, white went for the f3 set. We were in this position where I was telling you there are many possible ways. So here white basically played f3 in this variation over here. So basically the move order are different, but we land in the same position. After knight c3, black castles. And now I'm going to discuss what is the reason of playing f3 and why I'm recommending you to go for playing f3 moves. The reason of playing f3 here is your idea is you want to play g4, h4 followed by h5. Because usually in the King's Indian defense, black is the one who attacks and white is the one who plays on the queen side and black is the one who plays on the king side, and we actually castle short. So you see, white is actually in big trouble if it doesn't know how to play correctly. In the 99% of the case, white is the one who land in the bad position. So basically, after playing f3, we are basically changing the sides, and now we are the one who are preparing to attack with g4 h4. So basically, in the King's Indian defense, the center is closed by playing e5 d5, and black attacks by playing knight h5 f5. Yep. So after castle, the game continues with bishop to e3. So basically, if we want to attack on the king side, we have to castle alongside. Yeah, to keep our king safe. We have a6, knight to e2, c6. And now there are many players who have not seen this position, and they must be wondering, what is this? Why black simply wasted the moves like a6, c6? What is the idea? This is a common theory, and the idea of this theory is black wants to play b5. As black got to know that white have already played f3, and white is already preparing to play on the king side, so black is already preparing to attack on the queen side, so that whenever we try to castle on the long side, black would already having some initiative as he has already pushed his pawns on the queen side. So yeah, black idea is to play b5, and there are the common way to continue the position is to play c5. And if black takes, white can take back. If black tries to push b5, we can simply end pass, and after queen b6, we can play queen d2 and we can continue the position. But white went for a different approach, which is to play a4. A nice move. In this case, also white is also stopping b5, because in this case, if black tries to play b5, here we can capture with the a pawn, and here basically black cannot capture this pawn with the a pawn because the rook is hanging. That is why b5 cannot be possible. We have a5 by black, so that because white was preparing to play a5 and black would be simply demobilized on the queen side. That is why a5 not allowing white to grab more space on the queen side. And now finally we have g4 from white. You see, white haven't made any waste moves till now. e5 finally. This is the basic idea. The bishop on g7 is very strong, so black is trying to open up the position with e5. And in this position, a common mistake, I would not say a common mistake, but a common move by every chess players in the lower level, and you can see in the club level, in the amateur level, they always try to push the pawn, or they try to capture the pawn. They try to find an immediate solution. But you can actually simply wait. What is your idea? You know that you want to attack on the king side, and you want to castle queen side to keep your king safe. And if black captures the pawn, you can capture the pawn with the knight. So basically, you are having no problem. But there are many players who think push the pawn, takes the pawn, try to find an immediate solution. White played queen d2, a simple move, going according to the plan. White wants to play bishop h6 at some point. White wants to castle at some point, even on the next move. Black took. And actually, after e into d4, on the move number 10, we are having a completely new game. Queen d2 was played in the game. There were games, but e into d4 was a completely new game. And after e into d4, we play knight into d4. You see, if we would have simply pushed the pawn or took the pawn, our knight on e2 would have been simply bad. Although we can develop it to g3, h4, h5. But here we simply, our knight is perfect on d4. Although the bishop is open, but in the exchange, we simply played queen d2 and we also developed the knight, which is a good thing actually. Very, very good thing actually. So you already can learn one thing from this, and never try to find an immediate solution. If you are protecting something, just go for go according to your plan, because that thing is already protected. For example, this pawn was already protected, so white went for his normal plan at the place of pushing or taking the pawn. Takes, knight takes, and now we have knight to a6 by black, developing the piece. And the idea could be to play knight c5, and there are weaknesses like here, or even knight to b4 could be a good move, because the knight b4, there is no pawn like a3 c3 to hit this knight on b4. So white decides to long castle, because yeah, there could be no attacks, because b5 we can simply takes, pawn takes, knight takes, so nothing is coming up. Knight to c5, king to b1. First, keeping the king safe, because the king is generally safe on the whenever we try to castle long, we try to play king b1, because we basically control this a1 and the a2 square, which is a good thing. Knight to d7, and this move, I would not consider this move as a mistake or the blunder, but actually this move is considered as an inaccurate move. The reason is very simple. I'm going to discuss. After knight to d7, first of all, the idea for black is black wants to play knight to b6, putting pressure on the a4 pawn and the c4 pawn, as there is already one knight hitting the a4 pawn. In second, we are opening up the bishop, which is actually a very good thing. Third plan could be that as we move the knight, there could be some ideas of pushing the f5 pawn and trying to open up the rook. These could be the ideas. But actually a better move could be to play rook to e8. I'm going to show you why. After knight to d7, we have h4 played by white. And here, black played rook h6, and here white went for simply h5. And now, if I say, if black would have played rook e8, and we go to the same variation, after h4, we can actually play h5 in this position, which is actually a very good move. If you take, I can simply take back with the knight. You cannot attack on the king side no more. You can't push h pawn because I'm already having this knight. If you try to push, now actually black is the one who is slightly better. Black can now simply go knight d7 and the center and the king side is closed. So black can simply try to attack on the queen side, or he can try to open up the center with the d5 at some point. This could have been a good move, or you can say this could have been an idea. But knight d7 was played, and now white simply got h4, and now you cannot play h5 in this position because now gh5 is strong. You cannot capture with the knight because the knight is no longer there. So gh5, and here knight f5 is coming up because there is no pawn. The rook g1 can come at any time. Bishop h6, simply hopeless position for black, I would say. So h4 was played, rook a6 was played by black, trying to play rook b6, putting more pressure over b file, or perhaps b5 could also be an idea. So see, not allowing white, so giving more options to white that black can do anything. Black can play rook b6 and b6, but actually white is having an immediate answer, h5. Going with his plan, h5, the idea is to play queen h2, attack on the pawn, now simply threaten a checkmate on h7. So after h5, queen e7 was played, queen h2, and here white idea is to play simply gh6, and whatever black plays, we are simply going to play queen to h7, which could be very deadly for black. So black played bishop to f6. The idea was, if white takes, black can take with the f pawn, protecting the pawn on h7 with the queen. So white played simply g5, saying that I'm hitting your bishop. If black captures the bishop, if black captures the pawn, we can simply play gh6. And fg6 is forced to protect this h7 pawn, and now we can simply play bishop to g5. You cannot capture the bishop because h7 is simply a mate. Yeah, so now white is simply a piece plus. That is the reason black cannot capture this g5 pawn. So black went for the move, which is one kind of forced move, bishop to h8. Knight b5. Incredible move. Incredible move. I'm speechless. Such a great move. Now we are going to discuss what is the idea. I was going to tell you to pause the video, but I simply showed you the answer. Knight to b5. The idea here is, we are saying you can go and capture the pawn on capture the knight on b5. We simply want this square on d5, which is the most precise square. We basically want to hit the queen so that the queen simply moves from the 7th rank, so that the queen lost his control from the h7 pawn, and then we can simply capture the g6 pawn and threatening a mate on h7. This is the basic idea of black. So in the game, we have rook g6. If black would have captured the knight, we have simply knight to d5, a legendary move. Simply deflection. Queen to e5 is the best move. You want to trade the queens, or there isn't any option. Yup. Or else if you try to move something like, let's play queen e8, I can simply play hg6, and it doesn't matter what will you play. I can simply play queen h7 and it's game over. For example, if takes queen h7, it's game over. That is why queen to e5 is a forced move if you want to trade the queens. That is the last chance. But now simply bishop to d4 is coming up. Phenomenal move. Queen have to go back to e8. If it takes, we simply have one move mate, knight to e7, checkmate, covering the dark squares, hitting this king, and it's game over. So queen e8, we simply have hg6, and still we are threatening a mate, so it's completely losing for black. That is the reason you cannot capture this knight on b5. Rook g6 was played, and now white simply came in with the rook into d6, capturing a pawn. And here black tried to develop his bishop by playing bishop to e5, hitting the rook and the queen. White pushed the pawn to f4. Bishop to d6. Knight to d6. And here again, black cannot capture the knight. The reason is simple. Black has simply lose his control from the h7 pawn. We can play h6. And here, if queen g6, the only way to defend the h7 pawn, f5. Queen g7, and here in this position, try to find the best move for white. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, so if you have found the move, bishop to d4, you simply know this theme called deflection. The idea is very simple. You want to move the square from protecting the pawn on h7. So you are simply sacrificing the bishop by playing bishop d4, sacrificing the bishop, so that you simply threatening a mate on h7. So black is forced to play f6, and now you can simply capture the pawn. Black is forced to capture the pawn, or else there is no another move. Rook to g1. And guess what? The queen is hanging. Everything is hanging actually. This knight is hanging. This is hanging. So basically, the queen cannot move because the king is hanging. So the best move is to play knight to g4. Queen to e6. And now the game is over. What will you play? The queen is hanging. This knight is hanging. So you have to move the queen. If you try to play queen g5, trying to protect this knight, bishop into f5, and guess what? This rook is hanging. This rook is hanging. Actually your king is hanging. So it's already game over. Yeah. So queen into d6 is not possible. So rook to b3 was played, and now we have bishop to d4. Knight to e6, bishop to f6. Game over. You're hitting the queen. You have to take the bishop, or else there is no other option. Pawn takes, queen to c7. Still not capturing this pawn because h6 is strong. You cannot take because f5 is a strong move, hitting the queen and the knight. So you have to play queen g7, trying to still defend this h7 pawn. And now f6. If queen g6 again, I can play knight to f5. And now, actually, rook g1 is coming up. Actually, simply knight to e7 and it's game over, hitting the queen and the king. If you try to move the king, I can simply play knight e7 still, hitting the queen. And now you can no longer protect the h7 pawn. Everything is covered up with this knight. Everything is covered up and nothing is happening. So now it's a forced mate, or else you lose the queen. So yep. So pawn takes. We have queen to c7 by black. H g7, H g6. So I think you already know why black played queen c7, because black have to keep the queen on the 7th rank so that whenever white takes, he can take with the f pawn, trying to defend the pawn on h7 with the queen. Pawn takes finally, f takes, and now we have e5. Protecting the knight, protecting the pawn. h5. No more threatening checkmates on h7, but now queen c2. And now the rook is hanging, and the main problem is that the pawn on g6 is hanging. The rook captures the knight on c3, so that giving an exchange sacrifice, trying to achieve some counterplay, hoping that white is going to capture the rook. But now, queen into g6. Check. You can't move the king. Rook h5. Queen is forced to come in between, and it's a mate. So here, after queen to g6 check, knight g7 was played. And here white simply captured the rook on c3. And guess what? In this position, black, after move number 29, already, black decides to resign the game. And it's over. bc3, it's already over. The reason, although white is having 6 pawns, black is having 4 pawns. And position-wise, black is completely lost. Rook g1, it's already over. The knight is hanging. There is no counterplay. So this was an interesting game, I would say, a fabulous game played by white. And actually, if you put this game on the engine and try to analyze with the engine would say that black actually made 4 inaccuracies in the game and white only made 1 inaccuracy. No blunder, no mistake. White actually played brilliantly. Just let me give you a quick overview of the game. We have the King's Indian, the f3 variation, I would say, castle, bishop e3, and here white is the one who is attacking on the king's side. Takes, checks. I'm not pushing up the pawn or taking the pawn, keeping the position like that. and just going according to the plan. Long castle, playing h4, executing h5, queen e7, queen h2, and simply attacking on the king side, and it's already crushed. Black is already crushed. You see, we already discussed this position, right? Just let me go. After, you can say, after this fabulous move, I'm having no words. Black is actually already lost. Yeah, Black achieved no counterplay in the position. There were already forced moves coming up. White made an exceptional sacrifices. I mean, what can I say? Black resigned. So if you guys learned anything new from this video, and I'm sure that this video must have helped you, because this is not such a common variation, and many people think what to play against. They know that here they always try to find like what to play against this position. Knight f3, f4, f3. There's moves like bishop g5, h3. What to play? Yeah. But finally, I'm recommending you, or you can say, getting you the motivation to try to play f3. And I'm not saying that. First of all, I'm not guaranteeing you that you're going to win from the start. You're going to lose quite a lot of games, but eventually, after losing a couple of games, you're going to get the knowledge that you should try to play this in this position, you should try to play that in the position, and eventually, in the future, you are going to face no problems in the King's Indian defense, and you are simply going to crush your opponent with the white pieces against the King's Indian defense. So, if this video helped you anything new, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new to my channel, and I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.